News 18 Impact story. They've been detained from a resort in Phuket, Thailand, where they had fled to immediately after the fire in their nightclub, which had killed 25 people. Today, their anticipatory bail was also rejected by a Delhi court. In fact, their counsel took the view that one of the Luthra brothers, has a medical condition and therefore the judge should take a slightly more lenient view. Well, here's the thing. 25 people died because of culpable homicide not amounting to murder in their nightclub. 20 out of those 25 were their own employees. And their first instinct, instead of condoling and consoling the families of those who died, their first instinct was to flee, was to run away from the law. Why should they not be dragged back to India and made to face the law? There are a couple of procedural issues that still need to be ironed out, but it looks likely that within the next few days, the Luthra brothers will be brought back to India. They will be made to face the court of law and to stand trial for the charge against them, which is culpable homicide not amounting to murder. Now, here's what happens next. Here are the next few legal steps, the diplomatic steps that will follow. The Indian authorities are coordinating with their Thai counterparts. Remember, it's the Thai authorities, the Thai police, the Thai immigration officials who detained the Luthra brothers from a resort just on the outskirts of Phuket city. They will then finalize the legal formalities for deportation. In fact, all through the last 10-12 hours since they've been detained, they're at a deportation center in Phuket. Now, the deportation route is the one that's being used instead of the lengthier extradition process because Indian passports of both the Luthra brothers have been suspended. That makes their stay in Thailand without any valid travel documents an offense under Thai immigration law. They were handcuffed and brought to this detention center earlier today. The brothers are currently there in that detention center in Phuket. Once all the necessary documents, the flight tickets are arranged, they will be put on a flight to India. They could also be taken to Bangkok, where the visas granted to them will be cancelled. But after they arrive in India, they will be handed over to the Indian immigration authorities, who will then transfer their custody to the Goa police team that is waiting to receive them. The Luthra brothers will then be brought to Goa. They will have to face charges in Goa. Even though they filed for an anticipatory bail, which was rejected by a court in Delhi, their detention and the ongoing legal process means that they will have to submit to the jurisdiction of the Goa courts. That's where the offense happened. The Goa police will then take them into custody for further questioning as part of their ongoing investigation. But already, that investigation has led to the arrest of 6 other individuals, including one of their own business partners, a couple of managers who were running their enterprise there in Goa, in Arpora, when this tragic incident happened. Now, the Luthra brothers, they will be dragged back to India in no time. We're given to understand in the next couple of days, they will be brought back. The Delhi court that was hearing their anticipatory bail plea has rejected it. Here's what the Luthra brothers' counsel said while making a case for the 2 accused persons in the court today. They asked if the case was so draconian that their properties had to be bulldozed. One of their pubs in Bagator in Goa had been bulldozed. Are the deaths of 25 innocent people owing to extreme negligence not something that is draconian? That's a question that needs to be asked. But their property in Bagator, which was the one that was bulldozed, was not because of the inferno that happened at the club in Arpora, but this was after multiple warnings were issued by the local authorities over flagrant building violations and the lack of action thereafter. They also said in court today through their counsel that the case was not homicide, but it was death by negligence. The fact remains that the club operated without a fire NOC, it only had a single entry and exit point, and those posed very serious safety hazards. They argued in court that they were not served a notice to join the probe and a warrant was issued directly. But the fact is, being merely 3 hours, barely 3 hours after the fire broke out, they were at the airport, boarded on a flight to Phuket and took off. They also argued that they're not convicts or absconders. They're tax-paying, law-abiding citizens of the country who provide employment for more than 1,500 employees. If that's the case, why was their first instinct, very first instinct, to be in such a hurry to flee the country, knowing that 20 of their employees were killed in that fire? Now, irrespective of the all-out attempt that they have drawn at claiming innocence, it appears that the Luthra brothers have more to answer for. Now, there are corporate filings that have been listed as per the ROC website, which show that there are at least 40 shell companies that are found to be linked to the Luthra brothers, all registered to one address in New Delhi. These 42 companies were allegedly being run under the guise of their restaurant empire. These corporate filings, it's there on the ROC website, these show that the Luthra brothers were directors in all of these 42 companies, which raises serious questions about the nature of their businesses. Their Phuket expansion claim also stands exposed. The probe has revealed that there is no operational outlet in Phuket, no customer reviews for any of their restaurants in Phuket, no verified address hinting that they have some kind of an expansion in Thailand. Sources also say that such patterns often indicate layered ownership structures, tax evasion, or money laundering channels that are disguised in any business venture. In this case, it happens to be a hospitality venture. But they are currently in a detention center in Phuket. There is still some legal and procedural hurdles that need to be cleared. So there's going to be a delay of a day or two for the deportation of the Luthra brothers. One, the revocation of their passport, which means that they will have to now have an emergency document which has to be created for them to travel. You cannot on board a flight if you don't have a valid travel document, which means what is the travel document that they have for them to be brought back to India. Also, the visa, the Thai visa on arrival that they got has been cancelled, which means that a Thai court order has to be in place, which declares them as people who are in Thailand illegally. That would then pave the way for deportation. So this is likely to take a day or so. Arunima is joining us live from Phuket. So bring us up to speed with what the legal and procedural hurdles are, and more importantly, by when will they be put on a flight to India and be brought back to India?
So this morning when the detention happened, we were given to understand that they will be moved to Phuket, and they did move to Phuket from Hotel Indigo, where they were arrested, where they were detained, I beg your pardon. But then there were a lot of legal complexities that legal luminaries on both sides, so those representing India and Thailand, highlighted. One of which you just pointed out, the passport was revoked before this detention happened. So an emergency certificate, an emergency travel document has to be created. Now, Bangkok Indian embassy officials say that this can be done within a day, but then Thai authorities point out that even if that emergency document is created, their visa status will have to be re-verified. Visa they sought on grounds of being a tourist, that obviously after the blue notice, it has been established was a lie. So visa will be revoked. Once visa is revoked, a Thai court order is required declaring them illegal. It's only once that court order is in place can the process of deportation begins. In between, there's also weekend. Today is already Thursday, which is gone. Friday is just one day that they have to complete all these legal formalities. Saturday and Sunday, it appears that the court is not available. So then, realistically speaking, Monday or perhaps even Tuesday is the timeline that the agencies are looking at. A team from India will travel once that there is clarity from Thai authorities' side as to how soon they can complete their side of the legal formalities. But as of this moment, it looks like Luthra brothers will move to Bangkok to spend the weekend.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Arunima, thanks for joining us. We'll see. We'll be on the trail of these Luthra brothers. We'd exposed the fact that they fled to Phuket first here on CNN News 18. We've been on their case for the last 4 or 5 days since this fire broke out. I want to go across to Kiran Bedi, IPS, former retired police officer, former Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. Jayanant Dehadrai is an advocate at the Supreme Court. Ms. Bedi, let me start with you first. So, you heard our correspondent say that there are still a couple of legal complications that need to be ironed out before these fellows are brought back to India and made to face the law. The question again is, the longer it gets delayed, the longer the process of justice for these 25 families, the longer it takes for that to happen. What can be done to expedite this process? And most importantly, this whole claim that they have made, or that they didn't have an intention to flee, or they are willing to cooperate, therefore the court should take a lenient view, etc. That just doesn't seem to cut ice.
I think it's moved very fast. The passport cancellations move very fast, and the blue corner notice, etc., and the team leaving for Thailand to pick them up. I think it's moved very fast. The fastest and the minimum time which is being taken both by the Thailand authorities and the Indian authorities. To my mind, I think it's been pretty fast.
But tell me, ma'am, they are making this claim that they're not absconders from the law. They didn't intend to flee. In fact, one of their counsels also made this point that one of the brothers has a case of epilepsy. There's a medical prescription to prove that. They went there for treatment, etc. And this was pre-decided. Does any of that make sense? I mean, does any of that add up?
No, nothing adds up. Nothing adds up. I think that's the only defense probably they could have. And that's what the defense is always about. Medical issues and bunch of lies. I think it was only an attempt to get anticipatory bail, which they obviously, I think has the court order come? I believe the judgment of the court is reserved and it's about to come, I think. But the bunch of lies have been got exposed. What else do they defend? How do they justify their urgent exit, business or medical, whatever? I think doesn't make sense.
So
they're a bunch of liars.
Jay Anant is also joining us. Jay, it's not just what happened, the fire that happened at the nightclub and the fact that they ran away from Indian law, but also, there are now documents that are coming to light that they didn't have a fire NOC. Their last fire NOC had expired and they've not renewed that for over a year. The land on which this nightclub was constructed was an ecologically sensitive zone. It was never meant to have been constructed right next to the sea. That again was a flagrant violation of CRZ. Also, this was agricultural land that they converted to non-agricultural purposes. A whole litany of crimes are now coming to light. And you can argue it's post facto, but the claim that they are saying that, they're tax-paying citizens, they're law-abiding citizens, none of that seems to be applicable to this nightclub itself. Forget about their other enterprises.
Zaka, good evening. You're absolutely right. I think at the very outset, I'd like to say that the conduct of the Luthra brothers, disentitled them from getting this extraordinary relief from a court of law. And very rightly, I wanted to tell Madam Kiran Bedi as well that the court has indeed denied them this relief of anticipatory bail, which I think is absolutely right. Now, look, I'm a criminal lawyer and we defend individuals of all shades, Zaka. And everyone is entitled, in terms of our constitution, to get a defense. You can't say that, a person should not be heard or should not be defended. But in this case, their conduct, booking tickets, Zaka, 90 minutes after this terrible tragedy took place, where their own staff members were suffocated and died in the most horrible way. And, and they should have been on the ground to face the music. They should have been there to help their staff members and their patrons. And they were profiting from this enterprise. But I'd like to say two things, please. One, I completely agree with Madam Bedi when she says that the Goa police has acted with alacrity. I think they acted correctly. They were very quick. The incident happened on Saturday late night. Sunday, they were already in Delhi. These cretins had fled from India and had run away to Thailand. But I must point out one thing that really disappoints me. The government of Goa, according to me, has a lot to answer for, Zaka. And, you pointed out very rightly that there were no permissions in place. Fire permissions were not available. I believe even basic fire extinguishers were not present there.
Correct.
There was no fire audit that had been done. They had, constructed this on an ecologically sensitive place. But more importantly, the access points were so far away from where the fire extinguishers could have come that this was, in fact, a tragedy that was waiting to happen. So according to me, even the central government, Zaka, has acted, according to me, very rightly, because they exercised their powers under the Passport Act in terms of Section 10, and they moved to suspend the passport. So these, Goa police, no problem. Central government, no problem. But the government of Goa, Zaka, they are absolutely complicit. They are equally responsible. And Goa is a small state, Zaka. They're dependent on tourism. You have to look after the tourists that come in. You can't possibly allow such hostile conditions to exist for your tourists who are coming in to have a good time. They're not expected to know that the place is illegal. And now, after this horrible tragedy happens, they're trying to come in and demolish structures. And the chief minister, shame on this chief minister. According to me, he must share the blame himself. He should resign, according to me. Now he's coming out and making a statement that wherever illegalities are there, we'll take action. Well, then why was he made chief minister in the first place? To make sure that the law is followed in the state of Goa, which he's not doing.
Okay, so let me ask Kiran Bedi this. While all the anger, and rightfully so, is against these two absconders from law, what about the village officer who overlooked the fact that, this was built on agricultural land? There was this village central panchayat agency, I believe, which overrode the village notice that was given to them, asking them to explain why there are illegal structures built on an ecologically sensitive zone in violation of CRZ norms. I believe there was some kind of help that they got from senior police official who helped them override all of these illegalities. And most importantly, the fire NOC, which had been expired for well over a year, had not been renewed. And again, no one is talking about where is the chief fire officer, who is this fire officer who allowed them to continue without a fire NOC?
And Zaka, besides all the other officials, the ones you mentioned, I think there are three other officials who need to be mentioned for district administration, which I believe is a very big failure. This is a failure of the district administration. The Mapusa is a district in Goa, and it's a failure. Now, who runs the district administration? It is the district magistrate. It is the district magistrate. And he's probably going to be an IS officer. And number two, remember, there's an elected MLA. I think these two people, without the approval or knowledge of these two, I'll be surprised. You mean to say the local MLA does not know that this was happening? None of these land use changes can happen without his protection or his support. Similarly is the district magistrate. So I think they have ordered a magisterial inquiry, but by who? But when these people need to be found out, I think we now need to start making our elected representatives and appointed senior officials accountable.
Yeah.
Unless we mention the real ones, you're looking at low-hanging fruits. So I believe the Panchayat had written, but the inquiry will do. But what magisterial inquiry? Which magistrate inquiry? Because the concerned district magistrate himself is accountable for having, I think, being negligent in district administration. So I do believe that my experience tells me that the district collector or the district magistrate and the local MLA exactly are, and remember, areas have SDMs and SDPOs and even the station house officers. I think we need to identify and name them. And I think they need to be answering were they ignorant, or were they negligent, or were they complicit? These are the three people. Unless we start looking at the elected MLAs who have to give the blessing to such situations.
Enterprises. Okay. Jay, I'll give Jay the final word. We're also getting through Delhi police sources, and this is there on the ROC website as well, that the Luthra brothers are directors in 42 different companies. Now, not all of these companies are necessarily associated with hospitality. Delhi police sources believe that some of these could be shell companies. This is meant to route some of their funds. Again, you can argue and make the case that all of this is coming out post facto. How come they didn't know this before the accident happened? How come they didn't know this before 25 people died? But now it seems that they are wanted for more than just the accident that happened.
Zaka, I must compliment your research or your research team. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, these are the telltale signs, if you ask me. I practice on the money laundering side. To me, this merits a much wider investigation. And this perhaps suggests why they ran with the speed with which they ran from India. And perhaps this net, once the investigation opens up, I think perhaps other heads will also have to roll, as Madam Bedi very rightly points out. But I'm talking about individuals who perhaps have also conspired with them. And, Zaka, the thing is, in these nightclub or restaurant operations, a lot of cash is generated and tax is evaded. So you need tax havens and you need entities through which you lure this money out, you project it as legitimate transactions, and you funnel the money away to another haven. So I would not be surprised if what you're pointing out in terms of these 40 shell entities might lead to some assets that have perhaps been purchased abroad to stash away that ill-gotten wealth. And the short point is that they were profiting from this enterprise. So now I believe I've read some statements in which one of the partners says that I'm not some demon and that this was a pre-planned trip, or that one of them has said apparently that he was unwell.
Yeah.
And these are such ridiculous defenses to take. They should have simply, been here, and they should have gone to court and said, all right, fine, this has happened. We'll own up our responsibility and we're willing to, fix this. And there is a larger systemic problem and we want to participate in the investigation out of respect for at least those individuals who perished in that fire, their own employees. And look at their reaction. I want to say this on the record, Zaka, they're absolute cowards. And I'm so happy that the court today has rejected their anticipatory bail. And I think they have a rough road ahead.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Jayanant Dahadrai and Kiran Bedi, thank you very much for joining us with your thoughts and perspective. And we'll be on this case. We will be on this case till these Luthra brothers are brought back. And it's not just them. The local village officer, the panchayat head, the fire officer, the district magistrate, the local MLA, all of these people need to be held to account. There is no way such an enterprise was flourishing illegally without the knowledge and perhaps even the complicity of all of these other individuals as well. I want to now move on to another story that we're tracking here on Brasstacks. Amid the raging showdown over the Tirupurangundram Deepam row in Tamil Nadu, RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat has weighed in. He has said that the ongoing issue in Tamil Nadu can be resolved within the state itself based on the strength of the Hindu population in the state. He emphasized that the issue does not necessarily require intervention from outside the state and can be addressed within the ambit of the law, within the courts, as it is being heard right now, as the matter is sub-judice right now. Let's listen in to his reaction, because this is a weighty reaction that has come from the RSS chief. Whether or not that changes the politics around this issue, we'll wait and see. But let's listen in first to the reaction, and then we'll open this up as well.
If it needs escalation, it will be done. But I don't think it needs so. The matter is now sub-judice. Let it resolve. Awakening of Hindus in Tamil Nadu, I think it is enough to bring about the desired result. But if at all it is needed, the Hindu organizations are working in Tamil Nadu also. They will let us know, then we will think about it. But at present, I think the issue can be resolved here only, on basis of the Hindus' strength in Tamil Nadu only. We will not need to escalate it. Issue would be favorably for Hindus.
Now, the remark by the RSS chief comes against the backdrop of a local religious dispute at the Tirupurangundram hillock and a long-standing legal battle that has now escalated into a national flashpoint. Now, if you look at the timeline of this case over the last 20-30 years, in 1996, the Madras High Court had ordered the traditional mandabam lighting to happen at the Devasthanam. 2014, the High Court rejected the hilltop lighting petition, maintaining that there should be status quo. In 2017, a division bench of the Madras High Court upheld the 2014 order and continued the mandabam practice. On the 1st of December 2025, a single judge, and that judge is now under fire from the opposition. There's an impeachment motion that's been moved against him. This single judge, Justice G.R. Swaminathan, permitted the lighting at the Deepatoon Hill site. Now, this Deepatoon is the pillar on which this lamp is lit. On the 3rd of December 2025, a CISF escort was organized for the Deepatoon lighting, but eventually it did not happen. On the 4th of December 2025, a division bench dismissed an appeal that the state had moved against the single judge bench order and enforced the Deepatoon directive. But the fact is, despite giving clear instructions that the state needs to ensure that there is security for people to go and light the lamp on the holy occasion of Kartige Deepam, that did not happen, and now this entire thing has become political, with the DMK state government on the one side and this justice on the other side, and of course there are elections coming up in the next few months, so it's gotten deeply political. So what is the central dispute which is at play at this Murugan temple? The location for the lighting of the annual Kartige Deepam. Now, the Deepatoon pillar is at a 50-meter distance. It's away from a dargah, which is very close to this temple compound as well. It's called the Sikandar Badshah Dargah. There's been ongoing legal standoff between the mosque management folks and the people who run the temple. But as far as the lighting of the lamp is concerned, even the mosque committee had given in writing that they have no objection as long as a certain distance is maintained. And that is what the High Court judge upheld. However, the DMK government there, the state government, has taken exception to that. They have challenged the order. They moved a division bench. The division bench rejected it. We're expecting another order tomorrow from the Madurai bench on this particular matter. And in the meanwhile, opposition MPs, over 100 of them from the India bloc, have moved an impeachment motion against Justice G.R. Swaminathan. My colleague Purnima has more details on this.
War of words between the BJP and the DMK is only escalating in connection with the Tirupurangundram issue. Now, RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat had said that awakening of Hindus in Tamil Nadu would be sufficient to bring out a resolution in the Tirupurukundram issue, and said that at the moment the matter is sub-judice and does not need escalation. He further said that one thing is for sure, that this issue should be favourable for the Hindus, and this statement of the RSS chief hasn't gone down well with the DMK. The DMK now hits back at the RSS chief and says that this statement is only going to cost the Saffron party by the BJP, and alleging that the BJP is trying to politicize this issue is only going to make it worse for the BJP. At the moment they have 4 MLAs, and that is only further going to reduce, is the accusation that's coming from the DMK. However, BJP and the AIADMK have time and again said that DMK is only doing this and raising this issue because they are keeping in mind the vote bank of the minorities, and it's only politics. Yesterday, Amit Shah also said that in the parliament, hitting out at the India bloc, said this is nothing but appeasement politics, and DMK says that they are not supporting one particular community. They are only voicing out their views in support of the residents of Tirupurukundram who want nothing but communal harmony.
Now, following the massive disruptions and delays, the country's aviation regulator, the DGCA, has now stepped in with unprecedented action against Indigo, the nation's largest air carrier. From deploying a team of the DGCA at the airline's headquarters to round-the-clock monitoring at some of the individual airports, some of the busiest airports, Indigo is well and truly under the scanner. From 1,600 flights being cancelled a week ago last Friday, the number of cancellations has now come down substantially. There are only about 200 flights that, of course, the government has now cancelled as far as Indigo is concerned. That 10% additional flights have now been cancelled by the government. So otherwise, if you negate that out, Indigo seems to have come back to its normal operations as it stood before the last week when this entire thing came to light. Indigo today has also announced compensation. So if you've been affected by delays or cancelled flights in the last week, if you had taken an Indigo flight or were booked in an Indigo flight, you didn't get it on time or you didn't get it at all, then the compensation has now been announced for passengers who were stranded for many hours at various airports because of this congestion. Indigo has announced that there will be travel vouchers worth 10,000 rupees. So you can use that voucher to book your next Indigo ticket. Whether or not you will do that after what harrowing experience you've had, well, I'm not sure how many will do that, but these vouchers will be valid for any future Indigo journey for the next 12 months. So it's not just in the immediate future. For the next 1 year, wherever you're traveling, you can use these vouchers to book Indigo tickets. The compensation has been announced for severely impacted passengers who were the ones who were stranded for 8 hours or more and received an alternative flight more than 24 hours after their original flight's cancellation, and were also not given accommodation. Meanwhile, the Indigo CEO, Peter Elbers, appeared before the DGCA today. The aviation watchdog, we believe, might summon him again for a second time tomorrow, but we will see if and when that happens. So far, Indigo has been asked to submit a full report covering the number of cancellations in this last week, the status of refunds, the operational procedures, and the impact of the disruptions. The DGCA has also demanded an update on the status of refunds processed, the procedure for baggage returns. There were up to 10,000 bags, we're told, that were stranded at various airports, the airline's policy for rerouting passengers after these cancellations. The airline has also been asked to present its recruitment plan for pilots and crew with updated figures on staff strength and measures to prevent future roster shortages. An 8-member DGCA team has already been stationed at Indigo's headquarters to monitor operations, cancellations, and compliance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump have had a telephone conversation earlier today. The timing of the call is important. It came at the conclusion of the second and final day of the 2-day India-US trade talks. In fact, the US trade team was here for the last couple of days. The Assistant Trade Representative Rick Switzer was here. Brendan Lynch, who is the points person for the India talks, was also here. They've held their conversations with their India counterparts. Both sides are yet to clinch a trade deal, and the negotiators believe the last mile push in order to make the deal happen is now up to both the leaders, the principals, that's Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump. Agro issues and dairy issues seem to be the sticking point between the two negotiating teams. But the Prime Minister put out a tweet talking about his phone call with President Donald Trump. And in his tweet, he's mentioned that both leaders reviewed the entire gamut of the India-US strategic partnership. Not just trade. Yes, trade was an important component, but he's also named other areas that were touched upon in the phone conversation today, including critical technologies, defense, and energy. We will have to wait and see for an announcement from the US side, and specifically from President Trump, whether or not India and the United States have managed to clinch an interim bilateral trade agreement. Now, the two leaders also reviewed progress in what is called the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership. They've had a strategic partnership for the better part of the last 2 decades. They've also exchanged views in expanding cooperation in trade. Of course, trade was an important part of the conversation today. Critical technologies, energy, defense, and security. Both leaders have also agreed to work closely to address some of these shared challenges as well as advance their common interests. So both sides stressing that it was not just about trade. Yes, trade was an important pillar, trade was an important topic of conversation, but it was not just about trade. It was a review of the entire gamut of the India-US strategic partnership. All right, I want to go across to Siddhant with more details on this. Siddhant, any word you're picking up on the all-important question whether there has been a breakthrough in the trade talks?
Well, Zaka, in fact, there has been a series of significant developments taking place as far as India-US relationship is concerned in the last 10 days. And in fact, these developments were largely, overshadowed by President Putin's visit and media coverage around that visit. But, it shows that how slowly and steadily this relationship is coming out of the rough patch. If we only talk about last 10 days, Zaka, then it includes 2 defense-related major announcements, including India acquiring more Excalibur missiles from the United States. Twice, Quad officials met, once in India and once in the United States. Foreign office consultations took place between India and the United States. Informal trade meeting happened yesterday and today. And also not to forget, Zaka, that this visit of President Putin to India has not been received by very well in the United States. In fact, Democrats yesterday blamed President Trump for the failed foreign policy. So definitely, as I said, that there was a rough patch in the relationship. Now, slowly and steadily, it is coming out of that patch. And Zaka, the commitment was, and the word we were given was that there's going to be the trade deal by the fall. But there is no sign of that. So there were a lot of chatter that again has the talks collapsed, etc., etc. But
right.
The trade representatives in New Delhi, so many developments in the relationship, and this particular phone call between the two leaders perhaps tells that relationship is very much on the right track. But so far there is no announcement as far as trade deal is concerned.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much, Siddhant, for joining us. We will be in touch with you as and when there are further developments. Meanwhile, the Commerce Minister has said that negotiations are progressing well, but a deal will only be sealed when both sides see benefit. Let's listen into what Mr. Piyush Goyal had to say.
I can only say that negotiations are progressing well. We've had substantive discussions over several rounds of negotiations. In the past, I think 5 rounds have happened. But I've often said on record that a deal is only done when both sides stand to benefit. And I don't think we should ever negotiate with deadlines or hard stops, because you tend to make mistakes then.
Meanwhile, there seems to be a bit of a domestic blowback on this for Trump in the US, because in Washington, US lawmakers have voiced fresh concerns over the Trump administration's handling, or the mishandling, let's say, of the US-India relationship. In fact, one of the Democrat lawmakers from California really stuck it to Trump, even as she was making that point before a House committee hearing. There was this poster that was there behind her with a picture of Mr. Modi and Mr. Putin saying Trump lost India. Let's listen into what the Democrat lawmaker had to say.
Unless he changes course, Trump will be the American president that lost India, or more accurately, that chased India away. That is not a legacy any president should be excited about having. Singling out India for 50% tariffs, one of the highest rates imposed on any country, has effectively derailed leader-level meetings between our two countries. There have been real strategic costs to this protracted trade negotiation. And beyond tariffs, Trump has also attacked the people-to-people ties between the U.S. and India.
India and the United States continue to negotiate a bilateral trade agreement, but there is no clarity on whether this deal can be achieved by year-end. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has already said that trade agreements have many diversified angles, many dots have to be connected, and we do not negotiate deals with deadlines. While Deputy USTR Rick Switzer and Assistant USTR Brendan Lynch are in New Delhi for talks with Commerce Ministry officials, any final decision will be a larger political call. The decision will have to be eventually taken by President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. While negotiations have been in advanced stages, both sides are yet to reach a common landing zone on the average tariff rates. While India has made a very good offer, which USTR Jamieson Greer has himself spoken about, it is President Trump who now has to sign off on it. In fact, Mukesh Aghi, who's the president and CEO of US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, he told CNBC TV 18 that the recommendations have been made to the White House and the recommendations have gone earlier as well. And therefore, President Trump must now take a decision. However, Trump's message on raising tariffs on Indian rice and USTR Jamieson Greer's remarks about India resisting imports of row crops, meat and dairy indicate that the White House may still be pushing for more agri-exports as part of the deal. And this is likely to complicate talks which are in the final phase. India has mounted a multi-pronged offensive to convince the US about the trade deal. Regular talks are on between the USTR and the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of External Affairs and the State Department, and also between top officials in the Indian government and the White House. The Indian ambassador to the US is also regularly meeting US lawmakers to drive home the point that the US-India partnership is extremely important for both nations, and the India energy trade with the US has increased 70% year on year and will only increase further.
US President Donald Trump has unveiled what is called the Trump Gold Card. It is a highway for legal residency for any foreigner who wants to legally live and work in America. The only problem is you have to cough up to $1 million for this Trump Gold Card. It is much more expensive than the previous green card, but in the case of the Gold Card, you don't have to wait endlessly. You don't have to wait for years or decades to get the card. It can be granted in a matter of just a few weeks. But why would anyone pay $1 million just to live and work in America? That is the $1 million question. Trump administration this week has introduced an expedited path to American residency under the banner Trump Gold Card. The administration is now opening up applications for the Trump Gold Card, which is an expedited visa which the federal government will provide to anyone who is willing to pay at least $1 million. To apply for the card, people have to pay a non-refundable fee of $15,000 for processing, in addition to the $1 million to secure an American visa. After the applicants are vetted and approved by the Department of Homeland Security, they will then have to cough up the money to receive US residency in record time. Thereby, they become lawful permanent residents in America. Unveiling the new Gold Card at the White House, a beaming President Trump framed it as a $1 million gift to enter the United States. He said it is evidence that these individuals will substantially benefit the US. An individual may also need to pay a small additional fee to the US Department of State, depending on his or her circumstances. The website of the Trump Gold Card also provided a depiction of the card. It features a portrait of President Trump against the backdrop of an American flag and his signature under the words Trump Gold Card in all capital letters.
Very excitingly for me and for the country, we've just launched the Trump Gold Card, and all funds go to the United States government. Could be a tremendous amount of money. It'll also be able to have people like this keep, as an example, just one example, there are a lot of examples, people just buying them. It's somewhat like a green card, but with big advantages over a green card.
And it's not just individuals, even businesses can apply for a corporate gold card to sponsor their employees. Businesses will also have to pay the $15,000 processing fee and then $2 million for each employee who is approved for the card. But why on earth any firm would pay $2 million to hire a foreign worker and employ them in America, that is still an open question. The new program has been in the works for months. After previewing the gold card earlier this year, Trump signed an executive order back in September which officially created the gold card program. Trump has framed it as a way for the government to raise billions of dollars and prioritize the admission of immigrants who would positively benefit America, including successful entrepreneurs, investors, and business folks. Some Democrats, though, have denounced the program. They have said it would unfairly prioritize the admission of wealthy individuals. America so far has prioritized highly skilled workers through the H-1 and L-1 programs, but the Trump administration now seems to be going back on that. The emphasis now seems to be on wealthy individuals, including investors who can invest $1 million into the United States. There have been additional restrictions on the so-called professional class visas as well. The website also previewed the creation of a platinum card. Now, this platinum card would basically allow foreign nationals to reside in the United States for up to 270 days a year. That's more than 2/3 every year. But the interesting clause here is they will not be subject to taxes in the United States for any income that they have earned abroad. Now, usually US citizens are taxed whether they earn income in the US or outside. Foreign nationals who are approved for this card, the Platinum card, would have to pay $5 million in addition to the $15,000 processing fee. The administration has created a waiting list for the Platinum card program. Again, there is simply no reason to believe why anyone would pay $5 million just to get legal entry into the United States.
So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here, $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board.
Subject to availability, applicants who are approved for the gold card will obtain legal status as an EB-1 or an EB-2 visa holder, which means they get to lawfully reside in America. Once the application and the fees are received, the process is expected to take a few weeks. It's going to be expedited. But officials also say that a small number of countries may have wait times up to a year based on visa availability. Now, in the past few weeks, the Trump administration has made sweeping changes to the legal immigration system in America. Federal officials have put on hold all immigration applications filed by nationals from 19 countries which are subject to travel bans imposed by President Trump. Now, most of these 19 countries are either in Africa or in the Middle East, but that list of 19 countries could be expanded to more than 30, according to the Homeland Secretary, Kristi Noem. They've also paused decisions on asylum applications and promised to review more than 50,000 asylum applications that were approved during the Biden administration. Those changes came after the shooting of 2 National Guard members in Washington last month. One of them is dead. Rahmanullah Lakhanwal, a 29-year-old Afghan national who received asylum just in April, has been charged in the attack. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges. The Trump administration used and cited that shooting to justify putting mass immigration into America on hold. But whether or not there will be takers to cough up to $1 million just to legally enter and live and work in America, that is still a question worth $1 million. China and Japan have accused each other of locking radars on each other's fighter jets that were patrolling in disputed waters off the East China Sea. Japan has summoned the Chinese ambassador, and China has banned Japanese seafood, Japanese pop stars, and even Japanese movies from the mainland. So are both countries now locked and loaded for a war? I explore. Japan on Sunday accused China of training its military radar on Japanese fighter jets very close to Okinawa. This is the latest flare-up between the two Asian neighbors, which is adding to tensions which have already escalated over the last few weeks. Japan's Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi held an emergency news conference shortly after 2 a.m. on Sunday to give out details of the events. He criticized the Chinese government, saying it had committed a dangerous act. And just hours later, China disputed the Japanese version of events, saying that the Chinese Navy had been holding regular training exercises in these waters, which were already intimated to all the countries in the region. Japan's defense ministry said it recorded two separate incidents on Saturday in which Chinese fighter jets directed radar that could have launched missile strikes at Japanese F-15 aircraft. Now, these Japanese F-15 fighter jets were flying over international waters just southeast of Okinawa. The area is very close to disputed islands that are claimed by both China and Japan. The Chinese aircraft were launched from the Liaoning, which is China's first aircraft carrier, which was doing routine exercises around these waters.
そうした中、昨日には中国軍機による自衛隊機へのレーダー照射事案が2回ありました。このような行動は航空機の安全な飛行に必要な範囲を超える危険な行為であり、中国側には強く抗議し、再発防止を厳重に申し入れたところです。
And now in response, Japan has summoned China's ambassador over this incident in which Chinese military aircraft allegedly twice locked fire control radars. The summoning of the ambassador, Wu Jianghao, came amid deeply strained relations between Beijing and Tokyo. China has unleashed a wave of political and economic reprisals against Japan in recent weeks over its support for Taiwan. Taiwan is a self-governed democracy which China claims as its own territory. This latest bust-up between Japan and China has put the entire region on the edge, with China stepping up patrols near these disputed islands and has also vowed to respond resolutely. Chinese officials took issue with Japan's claim that these fighter jets had locked in their radars. Wang Xiumeng, who's a spokesman for the Chinese Navy, said that the Chinese troops were carrying out routine carrier-based fighter jet training, which had already been announced well in advance. China accused Japan of slander and smear and asked Japan to strictly restrain its frontline actions. The Chinese Navy also said it took necessary measures in accordance with the law to resolutely safeguard its own security.
中方在有关海空域开展演训活动，符合国际法和国际惯例，相关操作专业规范，无可非议。舰载机在飞行训练时开启搜索雷达，是各国通常做法，也是确保飞行安全的正常操作。此次事件的关键是，日本战斗机擅自闯入中方演训区域，对中方军事活动抵近侦察干扰，还恶人先告状，炒作所谓雷达照射问题，颠倒黑白，嫁祸于人，误导国际社会。
Relations between China and Japan deteriorated in early November when Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi told the Japanese parliament that a hypothetical Chinese attack on Taiwan would incite a military response from Tokyo. China responded furiously, accusing Takaichi of crossing a red line and demanding a retraction. She later clarified and she said that her remarks had been blown out of context, but she didn't apologize. In response, China appeared to be increasing the scale and scope of the exercises being carried out by the People's Liberation Army, very close to Japan, as it has done in previous disputes. China is hoping to condition the entire region around Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines to accept greater Chinese military activity, particularly to deter any potential Japanese or even American response if China were to launch an armed attack on Taiwan. To punish Japan, the Chinese government has urged millions of tourists to avoid Japan. It has restricted Japanese seafood imports. It has increased military patrols around these disputed waters. It has also tried to curb Japanese culture in mainland China. China has cancelled events by Japanese pop stars. It has halted the release of Japanese films. China happens to be the single largest source of tourists who visit Japan, sending over 7 million tourists every year. But this is not the first time that Chinese and Japanese fighter jets have locked radar on each other. This is the latest fighter jet episode that happened over the weekend. It's very similar to another flare-up that happened in 2013, when Tokyo accused Beijing of directing military radars at a Japanese naval vessel, again very close to these disputed islands. China also denied that accusation 10 years ago, saying that Japan was simply trying to fan tensions. The Trump administration has been watching these developments very closely, but it has not gotten itself involved too much. Last week, the Trump White House released a strategy document which said that it aims to prevent conflict with China over Taiwan and the South China Sea by building up America's military power in an overwhelming way. America has always maintained a degree of strategic ambiguity on what happens if China were to attack Taiwan. The strategy document seemed to outline that America will lean on the side of non-intervention militarily if that were to happen. President Trump, who plans to visit Beijing next April for trade talks, telephoned Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi last month, urging her not to escalate the dispute with China over Taiwan. Takaichi agreed to comply. Japan hosts the largest presence of American troops and military hardware anywhere in Asia. That phone call between Trump and Takaichi followed a conversation between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping told Trump that Taiwan's return to China was central to Beijing's vision for the world order. He also framed it as an unfinished part of post-World War II global order when Japan officially controlled Taiwan and later surrendered it to the Allied forces. Taiwan, which is home to more than 20 million people, also produces more than 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. And that is a key factor that will determine the shape and form of an armed conflict, if at all one were to break out between China and Japan over Taiwan.
That be the deck floor or the ground floor. There were no emergency exits. There were short ways to get them out.
The staff telling us that the open terrace and the open roof side of the restaurant has been closed.
Brothers have been detained. The brothers are likely to be handed over to Indian authorities.
वहाँ पे मुझे कोई ना फायर का कुछ ऐसा कोई उसको कंट्रोल करने के लिए कुछ किसी ने कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
I want to go across to Kiran Bedi, IPS, former retired police officer, former Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. Jayanant Dehadrai is an advocate of the Supreme Court. Ms. Bedi, let me start with you first. So, you heard our correspondent say that there are still a couple of legal complications that need to be ironed out before these fellows are brought back to India and made to face the law. The question again is, the longer it gets delayed, the longer the process of justice for these 25 families, the longer it takes for that to happen. What can be done to expedite this process and most importantly, this whole claim that they have made, or that they didn't have an intention to flee, or they are willing to cooperate, therefore the court should take a lenient view, etc. That just doesn't seem to cut ice.
I think it's moved very fast. The passport cancellations move very fast, and the blue corner notice, etc., and the team leaving for Thailand to pick them up. I think it's moved very fast. The fastest and the minimum time which is being taken both by the Thailand authorities and the Indian authorities. To my mind, I think it's been pretty fast.
But tell me, ma'am, they are making this claim that they're not absconders from the law. They didn't intend to flee. In fact, one of their counsels also made this point that one of the brothers has a case of epilepsy. There's a medical prescription to prove that. They went there for treatment, etc. And this was pre-decided. Does any of that make sense? I mean, does any of that add up?
No, nothing adds up. Nothing adds up. I think that's the only defense probably they could have. And that's what the defense is always about. Medical issues and bunch of lies. I think it was only an attempt to get anticipatory bail, which they obviously, I think has the court order come? I believe the judgment of the court is reserved and it's about to come, I think. But the bunch of lies have been got exposed. What else do they defend? How do they justify their urgent exit? Business, or medical whatever, I think doesn't make sense.
So
They're a bunch of liars.
Jay Anant is also joining us. Jay, it's not just what happened, the fire that happened at the nightclub and the fact that they ran away from Indian law, but also, there are now documents that are coming to light that they didn't have a fire NOC. Their last fire NOC had expired and they've not renewed that for over a year. The land on which this nightclub was constructed was an ecologically sensitive zone. It was never meant to have been constructed right next to the sea. That again was a flagrant violation of CRZ. Also, this was agricultural land that they converted to non-agricultural purposes. A whole litany of crimes are now coming to light. And you can argue it's post facto, but the claim that they are saying that, they're tax-paying citizens, they're law-abiding citizens, none of that seems to be applicable to this nightclub itself. Forget about their other enterprises.
Isaaca, good evening. You're absolutely right. I think at the very outset, I'd like to say that their conduct, the conduct of the Luthra brothers, disentitled them from getting this extraordinary relief from a court of law. And very rightly, I wanted to tell Madam Kiran Bedi as well that the court has indeed denied them this relief of anticipatory bail, which I think is absolutely right. Now, look, I'm a criminal lawyer and we defend individuals of all shades, Zaka. And everyone is entitled, in terms of our constitution, to get a defense. You can't say that, a person should not be heard or should not be defended. But in this case, their conduct, booking tickets, Zaka, 90 minutes after this terrible tragedy took place, where their own staff members were suffocated and died in the most horrible way. And, and they should have been on the ground to face the music. They should have been there to help their staff members and their patrons. And they were profiting from this enterprise. But I'd like to say two things, please. One, I completely agree with Madam Bedi when she says that the Goa police has acted with alacrity. I think they acted correctly. They were very quick. The incident happened on Saturday late night. Sunday, they were already in Delhi. These cretins had fled from India and had run away to Thailand. But I must point out one thing that really disappoints me. The government of Goa, according to me, has a lot to answer for, Zaka. And, you pointed out very rightly that there were